Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood.
Okay. Welcome back to Mom Jeans, the podcast, episode 27. I'm Leah. This week we have Lisa and Danielle and a very special guest we are super excited to welcome back to the podcast, Michelle. So welcome back. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. So glad to be back. I've really missed you all, and especially in these conversations, the setting. But here on the other side of birth, and excited to tell you all about the story. And I have a special guest with me, which is Parker. Parker here, who is about 3.5 weeks old and deciding whether or not he wants to sleep right now. So he decided to join us for our podcast.
Not only is Parker joining us, but Michelle is being the super mom that she is, bouncing him on the ball while she is recording the podcast with us. So, Michelle, thanks for taking some time to join us this week. We're super happy to have you back. And we're going to be focusing on you and Parker tonight. So, we kind of want to open the floor to you and learn about your birth story. One of our favorite topics on this podcast is to hear about everybody's birth stories, because each one is very unique and individual. And as I was preparing for tonight's episode, I couldn't stop laughing about some of the things that Ryan said in the episode when you and Ryan talked about Cece's birth story. So there's some good humor in that one, especially from the husband's perspective of birth and relating it to sports. And so can't wait to hear about how things went with Parker and how they're going now. So we're going to kick it off to you.
Yeah. Well, he's putting Sierra down, but I did mention it to him, and he's like, I'm on call if you need me, but maybe he can come in at the end and give a few of his thoughts. But yeah, no promises if we need an intermission or if there's cries. So you can either edit that out or, it's all part of the ambiance of a newborn podcast recording.
I think it's real life.
Yes. We got eyes. So it'll be interesting. Generally, Sierra and Parker look so similar, which is really cool to see. Except Parker is proving to have blue eyes, whereas Sierra has brown. So it'll be really interesting to see if those stick. But
did Cece ever have blue eyes?
No.
Okay.
So it's been strikingly brown. They both were gray when they came out, but hers was like gray brown and his were gray blue, and that gray film kind of went away, and now they're very blue. So we'll see. Yeah. Well, I guess I can get started with my story. And like I said before, please ask questions. Please join in. So I think where we left last birth story is like I was really anxious to give birth. I think it's actually part of the reason to give birth the second time. Like I think it's part of the reason. Hey, buddy. Are you tired or are you hungry again? Shh. Shout out generally to the dad shirt if you've never seen these before. It's a cute little shirt with a pocket. It's like a kangaroo pouch.
He's so small. Let's do it.
Okay. I'll just start over. All right. So my birth stories, I guess I'll start with, kind of my mindset going into it. You guys have heard the first one. I described my first birth as really not scary, but hard, long, and intense were kind of the words I used to describe that birth. when I, kind of as a preview, when I described this one, it's still very long, but it was way more powerful and beautiful. Like it was a redemption birth in so many ways. And I'll tell you all about that. But, coming off of like a really long, intense and hard birth the first time, like I was really anxious to deliver. It's still amazes me. Womankind has been doing this since the beginning of time. And, I, went to therapy for it. Really 9 months of kind of reviewing the birth story at different levels and, really doing a lot of prep about making sure my mindset into the room. And I was kind of worried that I would have almost a panic attack when I got back into the hospital room. So I'm really glad I put in that work beforehand to process the birth and everything like that. But yeah, I think the second birth is also crazy in so many different ways. Like the first one, you're so excited, but ignorance is kind of bliss. Like you don't know what can go wrong. You may have heard birth stories, but like you've never actually been the one in the room. Like all of us now have been, where like when you hear a birth story now, like things that are exciting and scary, like you can now picture yourself in the room. So I like to say now that after the first birth, you have now all this extra time of data of birth stories that you've end up hearing that you now add to your story as you prep for the second birth. So the second birth, I found the end was easier in some ways, like that 36 to 39, 40 weeks, just because you're so distracted with the toddler and a little less mental torment, but you're definitely now physically and mentally preparing for what birth is going to be. So everyone had told me your second one's going to come early. And so of course, like I'm trying not to overthink that because Sierra was 5 days late and we're sitting basically at my due date and Sierra's still not, or Parker still isn't here. So once again, I found myself in a spot where I was trying to figure out how to naturally induce Parker because I had an induction scheduled on Friday, the 23rd on the due date. Normally with Sierra, I went a week over, but this time he was measuring quite big. So the general consensus with the OBs was we should deliver either 39 weeks or 40 weeks just to make sure there wasn't issues with shoulder dystocia or getting him out, since there was we needed the vacuum the first time. So kind of the date we agreed upon was my due date that we'd have for an induction. So the week before I found myself doing, and weeks leading, I found myself doing a lot of the, hippie natural induction techniques of like the raspberry life tea. I was eating boxes of dates from Sam's Club, coming up with all these recipes, and got 2 membrane sweeps as well. And then I still partial to this work the first time, acupuncture is what sent me into labor this time. So I did 2 rounds of acupuncture this time. Both times, like I could feel contractions while in the session. And to kind of start the true birth story, it would have been Wednesday midday. I went to acupuncture and had a really good chat with the acupuncturist, and they did a good job of putting the needles in their magic spots. And then we ended up using the TENS machine as well in a couple places. And I was having light contractions the entire time. And, I sat there being like, even if this doesn't work physically, I was mentally in such a good spot preparing for birth. Like I just, especially for maybe everyone should, but maybe baby too, like I recommend like making sure you find this time to solely focus on the baby. I was thinking in this session, like it was maybe the only time I've spent a full hour and a half, 2 hours truly thinking about being pregnant this time and thinking about Parker and thinking about birth. And I felt this overwhelming sense of connection with him while sitting there, just, letting the acupuncture do its thing. And I just remember this really cool feeling I got where Parker was like, Mom, I got you. I'm going to help you, help me get out. And it was like this, like, male protector thing, which sounds, I don't want to like, again, gender stereotype, but just the sense of like, he needs everything from me now, but the idea is longer term, he'll be a protector in some ways. And it just felt this overwhelming sense. Long story short, it was a really cool hour and a half. didn't know if it would work. But that night at 2 a.m., I basically woke up to what I thought was peeing my pants. And turns out it was my membrane plug, losing my membrane plug. So my water didn't break or anything like that. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's actually something's happening. I've got some juices flowing, if you may. So it was 2 a.m. So I tried to lay down, couldn't fall asleep. So instead I finished Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the second book of Harry Potter. I was inspired by Danielle to start reading them again and couldn't sleep. But for 2 hours, I just had this feeling I was like, today's the day we're going to have a kid. But didn't have any contractions. But then at 4 a.m., I had a huge one. And I was like, oh, crap, it's happening. So I let Ryan sleep until 5:36 whenever Sierra woke up, just because I knew it was going to be a big day. But I was having full-on contractions where I'm having trouble breathing. And, they were strong instantly, kind of similar to last time, but maybe even stronger. And so, I was having big contractions here. And the other thing we agreed on with our doula is that Liz would come over here before we went to the hospital. But let me tell you, between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. was the most chaotic 3 hours in this household, right? Sierra's awake, just doing her toddlering thing. I'm having these contractions, started out every 7 minutes and went to every 2 minutes very, very quickly. And it was they were really intense. So I'm pausing wherever I'm at. We're trying to make her breakfast. We're trying to pack her lunch. We're trying to get her out for school. My mom's coming over to try to help take her out. Liz is coming. Montana's barking. It was just insane chaos until my mom finally was I'm taking Sierra out of the house. So she left probably around 7:45, and it was just us and the doula, and then crazy Montana needing to chase balls the whole time. And so all of a sudden the birth was just different, right? Last time it was in the middle of the night. It was dark. It was quiet. Montana was sleeping. So just that was something that drove me this entire birth, is I just wanted it to feel different. I wanted something that was different than the last time. And so from the beginning, I was this is truly night and day. Last time it started at night, this was a day. And so, and because they were in so intense so quickly, and I could it felt crazy to say, but I was after being there for some time, I could feel the head start to come out at my house already. Maybe not come out, but I could feel a sense of it. And so maybe 9:30, we were let's go to the hospital. I think we could have probably stayed a little longer, but it's kind of the same thing as last time, where we just felt this urge to want to get the party started. You didn't know how far along you actually were, wanting to get settled, all those different things. And then we have traffic and construction all over town. So we didn't want to run into any issues, there. So yeah, we probably got, yeah, I'll pause there.
So you said you probably could have waited longer, but you just said your contractions were 2 minutes apart.
Yeah, but they weren't a minute long yet.
Oh, okay.
So they were 45 seconds for sure. They were quite long. And even Liz was hey, you're right at the point where I'm let's go, right? She was you probably have a little bit of time. But let's just I can see the sense of wanting to go in. So let's just go with it. And once again, they were just so painful. But is what it is. So I'll pause there. We're headed to the hospital. Any questions about the pre-birth?
What day of the week was this?
Thursday
at 9:30 a.m.
Yeah. Thursday,
so
9:30 a.m.
Sucked.
Yeah, it did.
I do have a question about your contractions. So you said they're intense, but did you feel this time around that you could tolerate it? I don't know, did it feel different? You knew, you expected it, so it's not as scary? Or
yes, in some ways. I don't know, I've talked to, I've heard quite a few birth stories now, and I don't know if it's just me, but I feel I have my early contractions are a lot harder than others have been. I'm not saying there's others that haven't been that, but mine have always been so painful. I could talk through them early, I guess, but they were still significant early on. And yes, because I was better prepared for mentally to be like, just fight through it, get to the peak, and then it'll calm down, and then you get a break. Like really being in the mindset of breathing through the contractions, etc. But they were still not fun whatsoever. I'm not saying anyone's had fun contractions, but they were not cute. That's for sure.
Do you have bad cramps when you have your cycle?
Not typically, actually. No. But it's a good theory.
I don't know if there's any correlation whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I think because I have horrible cramps during my cycle, but then my contractions, I didn't feel them. So I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. So we rushed to the hospital, and then the funniest thing happened where we were in the parking lot, getting out of the car, and I'm just like leaning against whatever I can to get through this contraction, just trying to get to the check-in counter. And we get a call from the OB's office asking to reschedule my induction because there were so many babies being born that day. And Ryan literally was like, she's walking in the lobby right now. Like she's having this baby. And so it was so funny because like we're walking in the lobby when we just hung up with the person on the other side of the counter trying to reschedule this induction because there's so many, the day was crazy at the hospital. And the lady's like, I can hear you on the back of the phone. So that was pretty crazy to kind of have that moment. And yeah, so we get checked in, and the OB that was on call was about to go into a C-section, and she decided to do my scan just because she knows the second baby and wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have the baby right then and there to potentially postpone that C-section. So went in, and I was 5 centimeters dilated at that point. And so, again, it could have moved fast, could have moved slow. I never know. I don't know if she changed the C-section. I really hope not, because the sneak preview is I don't deliver till like 12 hours later. But I think she went into the C-section. But basically, checked in at 10 at 5, and then by noon I was at 8 centimeters dilated, and I was just in tears of how painful these contractions were. But the 2 hours in between, like our doula took lots of funny pictures. Like what was really comforting to me was doing squats. So I probably did like 300 to 400 squats, they tell me, just because like it felt very productive for me. Like it was squatting, and it felt like it was moving him down as I went down, and it like felt like I could like move with the contraction in some ways. It like my legs hated me later, but like it felt very productive at the time, which was great. And then poor Ryan, who's doing counter pressure the whole time, probably did the same amount of squats on the other side. And I'll have to get you guys the pictures because it's hilarious. But yeah, so it was kind of an enjoyable couple hours in the hospital of just getting through this, but then like 8 centimeters hit, and I'm just in tears. I think I'm in mental tears. I think I'm in physical tears. Like it's so painful, but I knew how much I had to go still, right? Like it's one thing to get to 10 centimeters, but then you got to get him out. And then you have to make sure he doesn't have shoulder dystocia. And then you got to make sure we don't need the vacuum. Then we got to make sure, oh, buddy, I know this is the part of the story you don't like either. But yeah, you got to make sure, like, it's just that when everything comes to a head at those last 2 centimeters and then actually getting him out. But I was just saying, like, at 8 centimeters, like, we had that fork in the road of, like, do we get the epidural? Do we not? Do we fight through? And, you know, again, between, like, the physical pain and the mental anguish of getting ready to actually get him out, I was, you know, very much decided on getting the epidural. And we had a good, you know, we went in with the same kind of game plan where it was like, I'd like to try to see if I can deliver naturally just because I had so many complications with the epidural last time, but I was not opposed to drugs by any means or any other interventions. And by 8 centimeters, it was just crystal clear to me. Like we did have our doula was great about like pushing back in some ways. She's like, here's your options, like think about these things. But then it like with every contraction that passed, I was like, the anesthesiologist cannot get in here soon enough. Like, I'm so ready for this epidural. Like, it's all going to be great. So, sure enough, the anesthesiologist came in, and, it felt to me that he was taking ages, because I'm just like sobbing with every contraction that's passing. And he's like making jokes. And I'm like, just get it in the back. Let's go. Like, I'm ready to reduce this pain. And, it was actually at 12:12 p.m., which kind of crazy. Later on, we look at the Sierra's nap log, and she went down for her nap at exactly 12:12 p.m. that same day. So kind of just like, we both got to relax at 12:12 that day. And the epidural worked great this time. It was very delightful experience all in all, except it slowed things down tremendously, right? Like, I wonder what my birth would have been, but the long story here is, got the epidural at 12 o'clock and I delivered at 8 p.m. that night. So, it took a long time to get to 10 centimeters, basically 6 o'clock. So I got to 6 o'clock, and, the OB came in, and the nurse that we had, which the staff again at the hospital was just phenomenal. I swear, labor and delivery nurses are built differently. And, they came in, they're like, okay, it's time to push. You're at 10 centimeters. And, I was hoping I was going to be a fast push. Everyone's like, second baby's going to fly right out. And I ended up pushing for 2 hours. So not the 4 to 5, whatever I had last time, but it was still 2 hours of every contraction, giving everything I got. And, in those 2 hours, like, there's no TMI on this podcast, but pooped out everything I had. I puked a couple times. Like, it was a really intense 2 hours. And, that's where just like, I just kept telling the nurse or the OB, I was like, just tell me when you can see his hair. Like, that for me was like such an inspiration last time. And I like to apparently have shift change babies, because, halfway through pushing, they changed out the lead nurse that was in there. And the new nurse came in, and, she was also fantastic. And after a little while, she actually got in there with some like oil and started like putting oil on his head, I guess, to help bring him out. And, like, she probably did that for 30 minutes. And then she goes, all right, I'm going to go get the OB. And sure enough, like, with like 15 minutes before he came out, the OB came in, and she was like, okay, we're ready. And she's like, thank goodness, I was walking to my car about to have dinner with my kids and got the call to come back. And so, she was there to help deliver, and Ryan really wanted to catch Parker this time. Actually, he wanted to catch Sierra as well, but because of all the complications last time, he wasn't able to. And the OB came in and looked at Ryan, who just had like gloves on. That's what the nurses gave him. And she goes, oh, no. You got to fully scrub up. So sure enough, like, 2 nurses come and do the like full sterile scrub on him. So he can't touch anything. He's like getting put into the gown, putting booties on, putting the mask on, putting the hair thing on, I think, and had his gloves on, all in like the sterile way. So he was fully ready to go. And, about 10 minutes after those, long stretch of pushing, they're both in there, the OB and Ryan. And turns out they're like holding me open, and mostly Ryan. And the head comes out, and then the OB basically like lets Ryan deliver Parker at that point. So he's fully in there pulling out Parker from me. And, that was just such a cool experience for both of us. I think it was a lot more than Ryan signed up for. Like, I think he just thought he could like put his hand on his back. But like, I think he'll never regret that experience for sure. But yeah, Parker came out luckily screaming, because they were worried about some meconium built up. And he had the cord wrapped around his neck twice, which they ended up being able to get off pretty quickly. But they were worried about his heart rate a couple times in a couple of positions I was in utero. But he came out, and we had a lot of nurses in there again, mostly for him this time, but luckily he was okay. And then got to do the golden hour of cuddling with him and really soaking up the moment. So I guess that's the story.
So
I think if I missed anything else.
from 12 to 6
Yeah.
p.m., going from that 8 to 10 centimeters, what was that experience?
Yeah, it's so interesting because in some ways it was relaxing. In some ways, like we all got to kind of rest a little bit. I had this one spot on my right side that they call it like a hot spot, I think, where the medicine wasn't working. So I thought the epidural was like a perfect level where I could still feel the contractions, but it wasn't necessarily painful, except for this one, like, it was like the size of a baseball, like right on my right hip. I could like feel it in full force. So it was like, 98% really delightful and like 2% like kind of painful. And then I had this dead leg where I, like, my left side got a little bit more numb than my right leg. And so we would try to move positions every like 20, 30 minutes just to like be in a different angle, and just kind of just try to get him continuously moving down. But yeah, they always had to be careful that my leg didn't fall off the bed because I couldn't feel it at all. So it was pretty funny. Everyone's like, grab her left leg. But yeah, it was peaceful, relaxing. At one point, our doula's son ran by on his way to cross country practice. So that was really cool because she like saw him outside the window. I enjoyed all the liquids I could. So I had a great bone broth and popsicle. So you go through it and you're like, why did I overthink this epidural thing at all? This is delightful. I mean, I know why, but it makes you realize that it's a great tool if people need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Michelle, why were they worried about the meconium?
So when they eventually broke my water, a ton of meconium came out. So they were worried it was going to be in his lungs. And then, and Danielle, I'm sitting here. Is that what happened to Weston too?
No, he swallowed amniotic fluid when he came out. Yeah.
Yeah. So the meconium, they were worried about like it being in his lungs and cause blocking the airways and stuff like that. So,
how many pounds did he end up being?
8 pounds and 4 ounces.
And what was Cece?
Yeah. 7 pounds and 4 ounces.
Oh, wow.
So,
whole pound more.
Whole pound.
Wow.
Yeah. The crazy thing is there's a lot of 8s and 4s and 2s in his birth thing. So he was born on 8/22/24 at 8:04 p.m. and weighed 8 pounds 4 ounces. And so my friend who is into all the number stuff, she was like sending me all this analysis, and she's like, 2 + 2 is 4 and 2 times 4 is 8. And like, all these different concoctions of 2s and 8s and kind of what it could all mean. But yeah.
Well, Ryan wanted him to be born on 8/16/24. Is that right?
8/16/24 was his date. He was manifesting, but it didn't quite happen.
But was there any tearing this time?
Yeah, still had a 2nd-degree tear this time. So the stitches, like, of all the recovery both times, like, that has been surprisingly the least of my worries. Like, I found as long as you, like, keep it wet and kind of don't let it dry too much. Like, so I learned last time to do sitz baths. So I did a ton of sitz baths this time, etc. But the tearing seemed to have kind of wasn't as painful as last time. But yeah, I guess a few things like compare the two recoveries. Like, I was on prescription strength ibuprofen for 8 weeks with Sierra, 6 to 8 weeks. And I remember going to my doctor being like, how long can I be on ibuprofen this high of a strength? And, she gave me, she's like, you're still within the safe range, but after, I can't remember exactly the right time. But she's like, then we start to worry about affecting your liver or whatever it might be. And so this time I probably took ibuprofen for the first week, and then I haven't been on it since, which is really crazy and awesome. My bleeding I was bleeding again for 6 to 8 weeks last time. It's like almost gone now, which is kind of crazy at like 3.5 weeks. I was very like muscularly sore both times, but this time, like, I don't know if it's because I just had no option but to start moving kind of quicker with a toddler, but like I could get up and out of bed without help. That was great. And pretty quickly I felt like I could walk again. This time I did, the first time you're just so excited to be pregnant or to have your baby and trying to get out in the world, despite kind of feeling icky. But I took the 15 days postpartum rule really to heart this time. So I would get out for like little things, like where I'd go to a restaurant and just sit. But other than that, like I didn't walk. I tried not to lift Sierra. I was really good about just like relaxing for 15 days after he came, which was really helpful. The first time I ended up having my like catheter Foley tube thingy fall out, and I had really bad incontinence issues with Sierra. So for the first like 2 weeks, I would just like lose my bladder every time, like when I stood up in our house. It was just the most demoralizing thing ever. But this time, I luckily didn't have that issue, which was just such a relief. Actually, just like a data point, I ended up not getting a catheter this time. They were able to they call it a dry cath, I think. So they can just like empty your bladder on demand versus last time it like does a drip system. So kind of interesting data point there. But the other thing about this one that I forgot about in recovery, a podcast I was listening to calls it grape bubble or butt grapes, aka hemorrhoids. Those have been brutal this time. Oh. So the butt grapes have not been great. And then I just like don't remember this as much last time, but I just feel so self-conscious about my like BO, and I'm feeling like I'm always needing to shower, and talk to a few other moms too, just about, I don't know if anyone else remembers that too. And then I've had really bad night sweat. So I wake up in like a pool of sweat. So I'm still kind of having that hormone drop, I think, and everything's still fresh and raw, but that's the gist of it.
And the BO, I had such bad BO when I was going through puberty as a kid. Like I had prescription strength deodorant.
Me
and, like,
too.
Went through all of that stuff. And it was so traumatizing as a 13-year-old girl, right? Like girls aren't supposed to be smelly and all of this stuff. And I remember like just absolutely being mortified by it. And when the BO came back, I got it first when I got pregnant with Wesson, then it went away. And then when it came back after he was born, I was like, oh man, that was the worst to me. I hated that because I just felt like I could never get clean. I could never feel fresh. And it was embarrassing to be around other people. And I'm like, I'm trying my best.
I had the night sweat so badly. I would wake up soaking wet postpartum so many times. And I was like in shorts and a t-shirt, and it was like December, January, February here. And I'm like, I am dying. I needed a stroller fan. I should have had a stroller fan above my bed. So it was just, I mean, that's the hard part. Brandon runs really cold all the time, and I run really hot. So it's like, oh, Danielle, when you were talking about the eucalyptus sheets, I'm like, okay, if we get 2 twin beds, can I just get eucalyptus sheets to myself? Because it's the worst. Like, it actually makes me very nervous for menopause. I will tell you that. Listening to people talk about menopause and the hot flashes, I'm like, ugh, those are miserable.
Michelle, Lisa just kind of reminded me of this. What did you take in your hospital bag this time? Anything different from last time?
Ooh. Way less stuff. I did not overthink packing this time. I basically had robes and an outfit for him, slip-in shoes in case my feet were too swollen that I couldn't fit in the shoes I came in with, and snacks. I'm like, that's and compression socks. That was a big thing too. I'm trying to think what else we really had, but it was not much. Oh, buddy. I'm gonna take him out to Ryan real quick. You guys can.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
I just forget how small they are.
I know.
So small. I will tell you, like, having been around her and the newborn, I was like, I don't miss that stage. I don't miss the little, like, when you don't know what's going on with them. You know, like it's like starting a new job. Like, I always hate the first 2 weeks to a month of a new job because I don't know what I'm doing. That's what it feels. That's what it felt like for the newborn. He's just so tiny, so cute.
I heard a perspective the other day of a lady talking about like becoming a mother, that it's like a promotion. You know, it's harder work, it's like more work, it's not easy, and like basically you're a leader and people look up to you, but she like thought of it more like a promotion. And instead of, you know, you kind of lose yourself, or like you're not just Danielle or Leah or Lisa, you're now Hannah's mom,
Yeah.
or Weston's mom. And she's like, I take that like as a promotion. Like it's like she was talking about how it was an old lady too. She's like probably 70s or 80s, and just giving her words of wisdom. And I'm like, wow, that's a good perspective. Like she felt so blessed to be somebody's mom.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So yeah, it's kind of cool.
although you don't get paid more. In fact,
No, you don't get paid more.
probably get paid
You work
less
more.
because you have more expenses. Yeah. So your hourly rate dramatically decreases.
Yeah. It's more like
Drastically.
volunteering, actually. Right?
Well, even worse,
Yeah, you got
you're
promoted
losing
to
money. You're buying more
Yeah,
fruit.
You're donating to the organization that you are running.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A nonprofit, basically, right? Is that,
Yeah.
or pro bono?
Yeah.
Doing it for free.
Pro bono.
So, Michelle, how has your transition to 2 kids been?
I've kind of been describing it as like there's 2 speeds right now. It's either very calm or like pure chaos. Like it's just no in between right now. Like, you know, feeling so grateful for our community that we have, you know, between all of you, my parents kind of being in town and being so helpful. And then Ryan's been awesome with Sierra. Like, I will tell you, there's some sort of like little payback that happens after going through 10 months or 40 weeks of being pregnant and going through birth. And then you're sitting there peacefully breastfeeding your first kid. And then you hear your husband just like dying outside with chasing a toddler. And, you know, Sierra's been so good overall. Like, I think I used to say 90% she was great. She's probably more like 80% now. She's gotten like a little bit more jealous as the weeks have gone on, a little more clingy for sure. But like, she came home from school today and the first thing she does is go, oh, baby. And she like went to go find where he was. And then she went and gave him a hug and a kiss. And, you know, those moments are really special. And so it's generally been, you know, beautiful chaos, but definitely some really hard moments. And then you end the day and like, you know, I'm usually in bed by 8:30, you know, and you're just so exhausted. And then, you know, we've been kind of splitting it up where Ryan's taking Sierra in the mornings because she wakes up so early, but you know, that starts at 5:30, 5 to 6. And it's really just hits really hard when the nights are already really short and you're up feeding all night. So it's hard. Like, there's no question about it, but we're trying to remain very, you know, happy about it and grateful and having a good sense of humor, asking for help when we need it, which again, the community's been so grateful. They're so helpful overall. And it's been just it's been a good experience. So transitioning, but it's happening.
Nice.
So you said Cece is getting more jealous. What is that showing up as?
Tantrums, showing up as wanting to just like be super clingy to me. Like now every time I'm feeding, if she's there, she wants to sit on my lap too. So, you know, we already have so many pictures of just like Parker on one boob and Sierra on the other side of my leg, trying to feed them both. And that's like the only way to keep her calm in some situations. Like, she luckily hasn't done much hitting. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that comes soon though. but she's just tantruming, throwing on the floor, being a little more defiant. And there's so many things. I'm like, is this because she's 18 months? Is this because she's teething? Is this because she's jealous? I can never exactly correlate what that is, but this weekend specifically, it spiked up more than it had the last couple weeks.
That's the hardest part, because when you're around other people that want to meet the baby or be around the baby, and you're like, oh, they're watching. Like, I can remember like looking over at Hannah and she's just staring at the person, like giving the baby all the attention. And it was like, oh, like you can't say, oh, please don't give my baby attention. Right. But it's hard. It's hard. They're always watching. It's creepy. But
and I know people are always looking for like tactics for introducing the second kid. So I'll share what we did. Inspired by a lot of your ideas that we've heard, or people that in our network. So we had Parker get Sierra a toy when we came home from the hospital. One of the biggest things is she was down for a nap when we came home from the hospital, which was great timing. So I went up to the room to go get her from bed. And so we sat on the chair, let her kind of wake up a minute, and her and I had kind of just like a private moment, and because we had been gone for a couple of days. And we brought her down the stairs, and she then got to meet Parker, and we had this moment where she was seeing him. And we've had this baby doll for the last couple of months too that she's kind of associated with too, but she just was so intrigued by it. She was quiet, investigating it, trying to figure it out, but saying baby a lot and pointing to him, and pointed to different body parts, which was really cool. And then we revealed the toy that he got for her, which was like this kind of kids full-size camper van that has a little kitchen in it and a steering wheel. It's very cute. So that's been like his gift to her that we keep saying. And then, when her and I are trying to have like things during the week that's just us. So I'm taking her to music class solo most of the time, and her and I try to go out for walks every once in a while, like just the two of us. And then whenever she comes home from school, if I don't pick him up, I like almost always make sure he's like put down somewhere, and then I'm having those moments with her. And then still try to do that same tip you gave, Lisa, right? Like if the toddler needs you, like they will remember if you chose them or the baby, but the baby won't. So really putting Parker down when Sierra needs support. And yes, it's hard sometimes if like Parker's crying or is feeding or whatnot, but I'm trying to just give her that attention when I can. But still, there's no perfect science, I don't think.
How's Ryan been doing with the transition to 2?
Good. I probably would echo similar things. Like I think that him and our transition has been even better this time, in my opinion. Like I think that our working communication and collaboration through 2 has actually been easier and stronger. I think that's a joy of the second one, which is kind of good, but it's been like a rebonding in some ways for us. I just give all the shout out to him. Like he had to work extra hard to get throughout the end of my pregnancy. And then, even now too, I was physically like hated being pregnant this time. Like it was especially in the second half last trimester, like I was not enjoying it. I had so much physical pain. It was hard to walk. It was hard to stand. It was hard to sleep. It was hard to pick up Sierra. I felt that I couldn't be a good mom to her. It was just really taxing. So he already had to step up in a lot of ways then. And then of course in my recovery, and even now, like with being full-time on Sierra a lot of times. So I think there's definitely moments that are really hard. And I think all of us would echo that, but I think we're surprised how well we're getting through it day by day and taking it what it is. Lisa, there was a line you told him, I don't know if you know this, but like that he used a lot. Like you said it in passing when you're talking about Hannah, you're just like, yesterday I was in the zone. Like I was in mom mode. I was having such a good day. And today I just am not. I'm like, can't remember exactly how, because it's now hearsay from him, but you must have been like, I'm like 50% in the zone and I'm having a harder day. And he goes, that's how I'm trying to equivalent myself to sometimes around like, sometimes I'm really in it, some hours, some minutes, I'm like feeling good about parenting. And other moments, like I just get extra frustrated or get extra stressed about it. Yeah, so we'll see. I'm anxious for as he gets more mobile and more vocal and doesn't sleep as much. Like I just think like trying to enjoy his peace and his generally his sleeping period, because I just feel like it's gonna get more taxing in a lot of ways.
That was always my concern, is like when they're both mobile, how's this gonna go? And it's tough. Like today was our first, like, Aubrey just started crawling last week, and I had to go take care of Hannah because she was going to the bathroom or whatever. And I come back and Aubrey's gone and Brandon's making dinner. And I was like, where is she? And he's like, what do you mean, where is she? And I was like, where's Aubrey? And he's like, she's right next to the couch. And I was like, she's not there. And he's like, what do you mean she's not there? And the two of us just have this moment of like, oh my gosh, where is she? And she like heard us talking and she like popped out from the side of the wall and just started squealing. And we were like, oh my God, we forgot. Like we had a pen for Hannah, and I think we need to bring the pen back so that we can like keep her in the pen while we're chasing Hannah around, because yeah, you're right. You're so right. It's like the two mobile, you're like, oh my gosh, it's hard. I understand why people have the 4-year age gaps for their kids, because that is like the 4-year-old, you can say, go color, go sit down and do an activity. Hannah's just not there yet. She just wants to run and do everything you tell her not to do. So yeah, it's always fun when we go over to your house, or you guys come over to our house and there's 4 kids and you're like, okay, this is our lives going forward for a while. And it's chaos, but it was cute today when Hannah came over and they both started screaming and running at each other, Cece and Hannah, and then they gave each other a hug, and it was like, oh, this is cute. It is.
Cute. Yeah, exactly. So it's all worth it, but it's like, oh, these moments. Yeah. But I'm just very grateful for Ryan, very grateful for my parents. My parents have been coming over. Like the hours that are the hardest are like 5:30 to getting Sierra out the door for daycare. 8:00 is when we typically leave. So my parents have been coming over around 7 to help us like get dressed, pack the lunch. Like I'm trying to get 1 extra pump in a day in the morning. Like and then just cleaning this house is hard before. And now it's 10 times worse. It's just constant chaos. So that's been specifically really helpful. That hour, the witching hour in the mornings.
I do think too, like, I mean, I know what you and I, Michelle, have done is hard, but we are very lucky we've had daycare to send our older to while we can spend time and focus on the second, because I just can't imagine like Danielle, being a stay-at-home mom, like your kid is there all the time. Like that's hard when you're trying to balance. Like I was just saying when you ran out of the room for a second, I don't know if you heard me, but it's like starting a new job. Like I always hate the first 2 weeks to a month of starting a new job, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what's going on. And with the newborn that comes along, it's like, oh, this isn't Hannah. Like she has totally different tells but you don't learn those for a while. And so you're like, okay, how do I balance this new baby that I don't know and I can't speak its language yet? I will, but also like, yeah, you have those moments of like, am I giving Sierra or Hannah all that I can and being able to do enough for Parker and Aubrey? It's a mental warfare you go through, I think, for sure. But
so what are some of the key characteristics that you are able to separate between Sierra and Parker right now, if any?
Yeah. Well, physically they look identical.
They look
Apple photos
exactly the same.
Apple photos can't tell the difference of the two of them, and it's so funny. And I showed Ryan a picture of like Sierra and the bouncer, when she was little, and Ryan goes, when did we put him in the bouncer? I was like, oh no, that's your daughter. Like it's so funny to watch that happen. But physically, like I guess there's lots of differences already. Like in my opinion, I'm like grateful for a lot of them. He's a much better sleeper, daytime and nighttime. Like he's much like he gets frustrated, you just hurt him a little bit, but like he's a lot more patient, a lot quieter, doesn't scream. Like, I feel like Sierra had colic out of the womb, basically. And she was also required to be contact napped and slept at night. Like the entire first 4 weeks, we couldn't get her to sleep in the bassinet. And so it was kind of us alternating, kind of staying awake or in doing kind of different techniques, etc. And then this time he's been able to sleep in the bassinet since night night 3, because night 2 in the hospital, we actually had, I think he had a lot of, some of that meconium still stuck, and he was very gassy and like coughing up and couldn't fall asleep. And so the nurses really kindly took him out of our room for an hour, or for 4 hours. And they passed him around, and they like held him while we got to have a stretch of sleep, which was so nice. And we felt really guilty about it, but the nurses were like, we never get to play with the babies, like, and hang out with them and let them sleep. And like, that's part of the reason we love this job. And so they were really honored to have that, and to get to spend time with Parker while we got at least a 3-hour shift of sleep, which was really nice. So anyways, he slept great in the bassinet. He sleeps, he's pretty chill. Like him and I's breastfeeding's been even more successful than the first time, which has been great. And then, yeah, we'll see what other personality things start to develop. But very different.
And then okay, so we've talked a lot about this in the past. But are you milestone tracking with Parker?
Yeah. I'm trying to do some of the same things I did with Sierra. I'm not going to be as good. Like the things I did for her is I did a photo. I had an album in my phone of like one photo of her every day for the first year. So although I haven't started that album yet, like I definitely have been thinking about it, and I definitely have a picture every day. So I'm going to start getting those there. And then I just have a note in my phone that I have been putting like little things that happen. So I did that with Sierra as well. So I've been doing that, and then trying to do, I'm going to do like weekly photos until he gets to be a month, and then I'll switch to monthly. So those have been really fun. We just did a maternity photo shoot, which was great. And then I'm going to do a little like video with Parker and Sierra every month.
Just
to
backtrack. You did a newborn photo shoot, not a maternity.
Yes, I did not.
Say you're not announcing you're pregnant again, are you?
Hell no. Hell no. Hell no. Hell no.
It happens.
Oh yeah, we're not supposed to cuss on here. Heck no. Heck no. Heck no.
I don't think hell's not a swear. It's a place.
It was in my family's house.
Yeah.
But like,
but I don't think we have to mark it as explicit,
right?
Because of that, right?
Right.
So yes, a newborn photo shoot.
Did you get the pictures back yet?
Yeah,
we've got a couple. I'll send them to you all. And last time Sierra was such an issue when we did her newborn photo shoot. She just wasn't sleeping. She wasn't cute. She was crying the whole time. And this time, Parker was great. Sierra was doing the exact same thing. She was crying the whole time. She like wouldn't sleep. She was like not cooperating at all. So, they've kept her. She kept her trend.
I want to know the science behind second children coming out so much calmer and different. Like, what is it?
Well, but if you look at the psychology of birth order, that's not how it plays out in the long run.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, Aubrey already is starting to scream so much because she sees Hannah screaming all the time. So she thinks that's what you're supposed to do. And she just screams. And it's like, hey, listen, that's enough.
Yeah, I didn't take a full class on it, but part of one of my master's classes spent like a 2-week period talking about birth order, and I just think it's the most fascinating thing of all time.
Yeah, it really is.
And I always think it's very interesting when families break that dynamic and they don't fall into the birth order trend. And I'm like, ooh, how did that happen?
Brandon's right, like opposite for birth order of how they're supposed to be, and I'm like, ooh, I want to know, what did your parents do? Yeah.
That was me too. I'm the middle child, but I would act more like the first child. But
Yeah.
my brother and I do have different dads, so I think that has a lot to do with it. And my sister, she's still definitely the baby. Yeah, so it is weird, but I feel like I take care of both my older brother and my younger sister. So
Danielle, exactly the same thing here. My sister and I have different moms, but I've always acted like the firstborn. My brother's very much the baby, and I still feel like I have to take care of my sister.
that's so funny. Yeah,
It's wild.
it's funny how that works. Though I am the middle child, you know how like parents forget about the middle child.
Yes.
That stands true for me.
Absolutely. Same.
Michelle, did your experience with birth with Parker change any of your thoughts on your birth with Cece?
That's a good question. I was just telling Ryan today, like, I think as I look back over time, I'm going to be, I'm going to look back at like the hard birth of Sierra, because it really doesn't change like just like the complexities of everything, right? Like the epidural going wrong and the blood patch and then the catheter, the vacuum, the pushing, like the recovery, like there's still so much that feels so hard about that first time. I feel as the weeks and months and years go on, I feel infinitely lucky that like and still in the spectrum of births it was normal compared, in the spectrum of that, and in the sense that there's just so much that can be complicated in birth. Like all of us have had complex births in so many different ways, and so I feel infinitely lucky and blessed for having Sierra, but it still doesn't change kind of the things. But this time I think I'm going to remember how hard the end of pregnancy was. That's really but feeling a lot better about the birth and this things just went smoother this time.
That's good.
Did you
I do have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Danielle.
And I have a question, and you don't have to answer this if like you don't want to, but it just kind of popped up because I know like with Weston and him having to go to the NICU and breastfeeding was hard. It took a minute for that like bonding to kick in because I think I was also going through some like postpartum like depression. Yeah. I just want to know, was that different this time around, the attachment, since things, or was it kind of the same?
That's interesting. I feel, same thing. Like with Sierra, I think it took me a long time. I was like, I have her in front of me, but I don't have a connection with her yet. If anything, like especially in those first weeks, I had a little bit of resentment's the wrong word, but just like just you're still in recovery, going through like what just happened. And I think with him, I felt this immediate sense of gratitude towards him in a lot of ways, and towards her, right? Because actually, as my OB had originally said, you're going to hug Sierra for paving the way for him to come. And, I feel like my love for her has actually grown in this process. And then from him, but there's still part of me that like hasn't ingrained that, like, I know we have 2 kids and I know he's there and I know everything, but like, he's still an afterthought, right? In so many ways, the second kid, and like, we'll be so focused on chasing Sierra. We'll be like we were about to leave this restaurant the other day, and we're all packing up, and then Sierra's hanging out with my dad, like just holding him, and he's like, "Don't you need your kid?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, like of course we do." Like we wouldn't have forgot about him, but he's like just so cozy and chill that it just you're still ingraining him in yourself. But I think, I'm still waiting for the hormones to fully adjust, but like, I'm also mentally just feeling a lot better this time around too. I don't know if it's like the second kid. I don't know if it's confidence. I don't necessarily know if it's like, I don't think we're going to do this again. So the fact that this phase of birth and the scariness and this just this huge weight of anxiety that I've been carrying with me since before Sierra was born, knowing that we wanted to have 2 kids is like off my shoulders. But like, I'm almost having, like, I'm hesitant to say this because I know postpartum depression is just so real, but I'm almost having the opposite of it. Like, I'm having like postpartum euphoria in some capacity. Like, I'm like feeling the sense of relief. I'm like feeling a sense of like family. I'm feeling like I can be more clear-headed in so many ways because I'm not so physically weighed down by being pregnant and this cloud of anxiousness that I was been carrying with me. So this postpartum period has been good, which I think is to go back to your question, Danielle, like helping with my bonding with him quicker than with Sierra.
That's awesome.
But I'm still waiting for his first smile back at me, because that's when things really start to get exciting.
Oh yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think I have anything else. Very excited for you. Excited for your family of 4. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. I know it's learn from the best, and it's, again, it's been awesome to be just around the door from you guys and seeing how, well you've managed it. And I loved our conversation. We really got into it on that podcast around 2 Under 2, and I know our sound quality wasn't that bad, the best, but our conversation quality really was. And it, it's just, you do it, and day by day. So we'll see what the next couple weeks and months bring. I'm excited to sleep through the night again, that's for sure. And I'm glad that first week of breastfeeding where your nipples are just like, so mad at you is over. And just ready to keep moving forward. I'm trying really hard not to want to rush through this infant newborn stage, but I still am finding a sense of like, I can't wait till you're a little bit bigger and I can sleep through the night and I can engage with you more. And, you can defend yourself against Sierra. Like, those things that like, I'm trying really hard to be present in the moment, but that's still hard.
I can't remember, Michelle, were you a fan of the newborn phase with Cece?
I tell Ryan, like, I would have a 3rd kid if he could be pregnant and we could be given a 1-year-old. Like, actually 14 months is when I really started loving parenting. I liked it before, I'm liking it now, but like, I really have loved it ever since like 14 months, like 13, 14 months, like something clicked, and I've just really been thriving in this era with her. And so, I'm, again, still liking it, but I'm finding myself yearning for that phase too. Tantrums and all, I'm just loving the conversation and the communication and the creativity that we can watch, and watching their brains click as they figure things out and explore the world. It's been really cool. So,
Danielle, did you like the newborn phase?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I didn't dislike it, but kind of what Michelle said too, like what you said. This stage has been so much fun, but when I see Parker and I just see little babies, I'm like, oh, they're so little, and I don't know when he got so tall, and when I try to hold him like and rock him, just I'll sing him a song right before bed, and his like legs are wrapped around me, and I'm like, when did you get so big? And then it just went by so fast. It was like felt really long in the moment, and now looking back, it's like, where did that time go? So I think I like miss that. I miss the cuddles, but it's been great.
What about you, Leah?
And Lisa, Lisa, you said you don't miss the newborn stage.
I don't miss the little. No, I don't miss that at all. I think it's challenging, like Michelle said, like with Hannah, like I didn't know I had postpartum depression, but looking back now, like, ooh, it was horrible. And I will say, like, I didn't really enjoy the stages that Hannah was in until she was like 4 months, because that's when like a lot of stuff started happening, like started rolling and doing like, not being like, I think Leah, it's your term, the a potato, like a little baked potato. Like I didn't love that. And it's like really fun, like you guys said, when you start to see them connect things, like watching Aubrey learn and do those things it's really fun. It's also really strange to be like, man, I remember when Hannah said her first word, and like it's weird to think that we're gonna have two talkers at some point. Like that's weird, like, and we're gonna have two personalities in here, and oh Lord help us if she's even half as sassy as Hannah. Like this is gonna be rough, but I'm looking forward to it. Leah, what do you think? What did you think about the newborn stage?
I still will irrationally cry about not getting a contact nap.
Oh.
I just love those, and those are like part of our daily routine. Like we would have one contact nap a day. But I didn't like anything until like 7 weeks.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is hard, this is tough, exhausted, anxiety ridden, like just completely, I don't know, just it was not fun. I think I've told you this, Lisa, like I'm always like, I don't want him to grow out of this stage because I love this stage so much. And then you're always like, but the next stage is even better. And all it does is just keeps getting better and better. And that has been my experience. That has been so true. So I always think back, like whenever I'm like, oh, I don't want this stage to end, I'm like, Lisa said the next one gets better. And it's been true.
It's so true. And I think just to circle back really quickly, like I do think, Michelle, my experience is pretty similar to yours in the sense of like my recovery with Hannah was so bad, so long and so bad. And with Aubrey, like even the doctors, I was like, hey, I want to be released today. And it was the day after, like, probably, I'm trying to think of what time we had her. We had her 7:30 in the morning. So the next morning at 7:30, I was like, I'm ready to go. And they're like, well, usually people stay another day for a C-section. I'm like, I'm good. I feel great. Like, get me out of here. This is awesome. I feel so good. And even like you said, Michelle, my bleeding went away faster. My pain went away faster. And I don't know if it's because I had to chase Hannah around and do those things, or if it was like truly like my body was like, all right, I got you. I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. Like, you're going to be all right. And I'm going to recover faster because I know how to recover now. But yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So
it reminded me of part of the birth story I didn't tell is like, so he was born at 8 p.m. And so my parents ended up coming at like 10 or 11 at night. My, I think Lisa, you guys were gone. So our friend came over and just sat and kind of helped and babysat Sierra while she was sleeping. And my dad tells the story. I was standing up in the hospital room and I started eating my Jimmy John sandwich. And my dad's like, you're upright? Like last time I couldn't stand for so long. And they all made the joke of like, I'm so much less war torn than last time. And, but yeah, it's probably a combination of like your body's done this before and you have no choice but to just jump back in.
You've had more training during that duration of pregnancy, right? Like naturally you were just more active than before. Naturally you were lifting more weights in the shape of a toddler than before. Like physically your body was probably more prepared too, just from being a parent.
Yeah, totally. So.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Well, Michelle, thanks for coming and being our special guest tonight. It was, I think this was the first time we all heard your birth story, which usually, like, I think we hear things in fragments, right? So for it to be a first time experience for all of us is pretty cool too.
Yeah, not by design. I just open book about it. Just like when you have that second kid, it's just there's so much going on. Like, Leah, I've seen you at school, but we've been talking about like all the other things that are going on. And I was going to share the moment, Leah, you said you missed the contact naps, but we were at music class this weekend and Weston was just having a, quiet time adjusting the class. And he goes over to Leah and just lays on her chest and just hugs her for and kind of is almost having a contact hug for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And just seeing the look on Leah's face, I started tearing up from across the room. And I can tell what that moment meant for you. So, they're still our little kiddos.
Oh. Yeah.
If you can't see on the podcast.
And it's not been fun.
That's scary. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's just being very reserved right now. And so it's just like, it's just mom, which I'm not mad about.
No.
So,
Yeah. I'll end with last time I watched Schitt's Creek while breastfeeding in the middle of the night, and just to kind of keep myself sane. This time I'm watching Gilmore Girls again, and it's just so lovely.
that's a feel good one.
Yeah.
I haven't watched that.
Yeah.
I'm finding myself being like, you're done breastfeeding? I still have to get to the end of this episode. Like, these Schitt's Creek were like 25-minute episodes. These are like an hour. And so I'm having a hard time going back to sleep now because I'm like, I wonder what happens between Dean and Rory.
That is funny. Well, Michelle, thanks so much for coming back on. We hope to see you on an episode again in the future. It's a treat to have you here.
It's always fun. You are all incredible women. I've had so much fun listening to your podcast as well, on the other side, and such cool stories, such cool, I'm just so proud of what this podcast has become, and you should all be proud of yourselves too. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.
And that wraps up another episode of Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Thank you again so much for listening to us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider giving us 5 stars so other mothers out there like you can find us and listen. If you would like, you could follow us on any of our socials at Mom Jeans the podcast. If you have questions, would like to send us your birth story, or give us suggestions or things that you would like to hear, please email us at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. See you next week.